Lieutenant General B.S. Sandhu, distinguished participants from Indian Defence Services, distinguished invitees, speakers, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. It is a great privilege and a pleasure for me to be with you, and I must thank Major General Repswal, who had talked to me about this program and had consulted Lieutenant General Sandhu, and we decided to do this program together. I think from PetroFed side, I must thank that it is a great opportunity for us to share our thoughts and to present before you how the oil industry has been trying to work in tandem with the Indian Defence Services to cater to the fueling needs, not only for today, but also for your future needs, which are very critical and important for the defense of the country. Distinguished delegates, this is the first time I think the Petroleum Federation of India has decided to work with Army to organize this program, and we have distinguished speakers from the industry, from Army side, as well as from the oil industry, who would be presenting their thoughts today. We are aware that Indian Army has to work in difficult conditions, whether it is in the Rajasthan's deserts, where the temperatures go up to 50 degrees in Jaisalmer and Jodhpur and those regions. But you have to also work and perform and secure the country in difficult terrains of low temperature regions and at the highest points in the world. I think serving the Indian Defence Services from the oil industry's point of view is very critical. And I think oil industry has always taken it as a challenge and also a responsibility to meet all your performance requirements for fuels and lubricants under difficult conditions as well. I think the speed, power and reliability are the most important performance parameters, and the judging factor for survival in the forefront is based on their performance. My colleagues from the oil industry would be presenting you on the subject of lubricants. I find in the program there are several presentations which will be made during the day on lubricant side. But as Lieutenant General Mr. Sandhu was talking about the various energy requirements and also was talking about the future, and I had earlier discussed with Major General Repswal also that what should I be speaking. So I have put together a brief presentation for the benefit of all the participants here, which will be talking about the future outlook of energy. India being a energy deficient country, and considering that we have large dependence on imports of oil and gas to cater to our energy needs, which are critical not only for the civil society but more for defense, because if you have dependence on external sources to cater to the energy needs in difficult times or in the war times, we have to be sure that we can maintain our supplies, at least for the defense services. Looking at this slide, I thought I must show before you some of the energy outlooks, how the things are happening globally and how the things will happen here, because they have direct implications. Now, if you look at this particular slide, you can see over the years there have been growth of oil and gas in terms of their production as well as the end use. Now, the different, you can see that even if we go up to 2040, in spite of what people say about oil and gas being in, whether they will be there in future or not, whether we'll have alternative sources. But this is a prediction made by the Outlook for Energy by Exxon, the global company. And many other outlooks have also projected that oil and gas are continue to stay, although the share of other coal will also continue. And the end use, if you see, there will be tremendous growth in the energy demand, And the global energy demand for transportation particularly will rise by about 30%. That is on global front. And Asia Pacific will account for 50% of the growth in the commercial transport sector for energy. Now, if you look at the per capita energy demand in select countries, you can find India at the bottom. I think we have a large population which is deprived of energy. We have not been able to provide energy to the same extent as the other countries have been able to provide on per capita basis. So that leaves us with an opportunity on one hand that we could reach out to the poorest of the poor, and I think if the largest GDP growth which is happening, there is tremendous growth which is likely to happen. If you look at the future demands which have been projected by various agencies, there will be negative demand in the energy in European Union, United States, in Japan, the developed world, primarily on account of the energy conservation efforts. But in the developing world, you can find the energy demand will grow from now onwards up to 2040. And it is heartening to know that with the kind of GDP growth we are having here, you can see the implications would be that India's will be the leading, if you see the incremental demand of energy, India will lead the world in terms of total energy, rising incomes, and aspirations of the people. I think that will lead to a great demand of energy in India, which will be the highest over these years. Now, if you look at the incremental oil demand also, the same scenario, the oil demand in India will also continue to grow, and we will have the largest growth as compared to any other country in the world during the next 25 years or so. This is the prediction which has been made by global experts. Now, when India will be at the center stage of this energy demand, and we are the home to 18% of the world's population, primarily using only 6% of world's primary energy at this point of time. We have 240 million people who don't have access to electricity. Now, with government trying to reach out to various villages, I think this scenario will change. But despite India's commitment for low carbon sources of energy also, because we have signed INDC agreements, etc., the primary energy demand is projected to double by 2040. But the bad news is that even the people are predicting that even then in 2040, 480 million people will still be without access to clean cooking fuel. Although that number will be down from 840 million in 2013, mostly living in rural areas. But I think this is a prediction which has been made by the International Energy Outlook. But with the government trying to reach out LPG to the poor people in various remote areas, we are from the oil industry side, and as well as with the government, we are trying to see that whether we could change this figure and reach out to the poorest of the poor in this country in terms of meeting their LPG or gas demands or clean cooking fuel demands. Now, if you look at this, this also shows that in terms of the total quantity of oil, million tons of oil equivalent, from 775 will grow to 2040 will go to 1908. So you can see the tremendous growth. And although the share of oil will remain almost 23-24%, and the gas will go from 6 to 8%, we are also working to see that whether the gas share can go up. And coal share is also projected to be pretty high. With all these climate change issues, perhaps the coal share should be brought down and the gas share should increase. That is what is going to be our effort to reverse this, predictions. The news is that India's crude oil imports will continue to grow. We have been trying to reduce the import dependence, but with the kind of energy demand which I have shown you, there is no way that India's crude oil imports are likely to come down. So India's crude oil imports will grow over 90%. So with that kind of energy demand dependence on imports, I think that's a matter of concern, which I said initially also, not only for catering to the energy needs of the civilian society, but particularly of the defense services. I think we need to really work towards ensuring the fueling needs. How can we work towards that? Now, if you look at the product demands also, more than 50% of the demand growth will come from diesel, gasoline and LPG. and India will emerge as the largest importer of LPG in the world. That is the kind of scenario which is happening. We will have to make significant investments in our refineries to expand the capacities over the period of time to cater to this kind of demand. Now, another thing which Lieutenant General Sandhu also mentioned was about the climate issues, and he also mentioned that we don't want to be behind other, the defense sector also will need better quality fuels to also comply with the emission norms. I think another thing which has happened is that India has signed the intended National Determined Contribution INDC agreement to UNFCCC, where we have pledged to greenhouse gas emissions by up to 35% from 2005 level by 2030. It's a big task. So I think all these sectors will have to, including the defense, will have to contribute towards this. And the transport sector has an important role to achieve these targets, of course, including defense. And vehicles, besides their direct impact on carbon emissions, have impact of air pollutants like black carbon, which have health implications. The fuel quality, which was also mentioned in the welcome address, was about the moving to BS4 and BS3 and so on. So this particular slide shows you that we have already moved quite far, from year 2000 when we started moving into this these issues. We have already, will be Euro 4 equivalent Bharat Stage 4 by April 2017 all over the country. And it has been decided to leapfrog from BS4 to BS6, which will be Euro equivalent in 2020. Now, if I look at these kind of issues, I think the major parameter is sulfur, which will go down to 10 ppm in Euro 6, which is the BS6 equivalent. In terms of motor gasoline, we have other controls on olefins, and the octane also need to go up. Perhaps that's the demand. On diesel side also, the sulfur will go to 10 ppm, while other parameters will not change significantly. Now, one of the options, when we look at the energy options for future, and we have large dependence on oil, people have been talking about biofuels, whether we can have biofuels production in this country. As you see that the relative greenhouse gas emissions are also very low with biofuels as relative to any other fuel. So amongst these, biofuels hold a good promise, and we have been trying to increase the blending of ethanol and biodiesel in our fuels. But the problem here is that in spite of all the good intentions, we have not been getting sufficient quantity. So I think there is a need to work towards that. If you look at this particular slide, which is showing you the, if we have to do 5% blending or 10% or 20%, there is a clear gap in the supply and demand, for biodiesel in this country. So I think unless we do something big about this on how to increase the supplies, there is an opportunity that we can do something on this side. In terms of ethanol also, this particular slide which I picked up also shows you there is a large gap in the ethanol demand and supply. If we want to, we can go up to 5% or 5% blending also. We find it difficult to meet the target, but if we have to go to 20, we need large supplies of ethanol. So there is an opportunity here that we can look forward to to secure the energy future to some extent. With demand outlooks, this is what we have to look at: second generation lignocellulosic ethanol production, and also converting waste to ethanol. I think these are the kind of technologies which people are working upon, and we have to also see that whether we can look at other options like hybrid and electric vehicles, which will lead to energy conservation. Now, hybrid electric vehicles and fuel cell technology are currently leading the solutions for sustainable development also. Both have advantages and disadvantages in terms of technology. Barriers are there at this point of time. But I think this holds great future. Only thing is, some people say that in case of electric vehicles, you are only shifting the source of pollution from the cities to the place where electricity is produced. But to some extent, the cities will become cleaner, but energy efficiency. But in terms of hybrid technology, you have clear advantages in terms of better fuel efficiency, I think various vehicles abroad were doing well in terms of fuel efficiency, and I'm told some of the vehicle manufacturers in India also have developed hybrid vehicles, and they are doing pretty well with very high fuel efficiency. I think that is going to be the norm. In this, there is an electric motor which is added, and this is the kind of, you have to add certain batteries. So, and then, when you need acceleration power, the electric motor also comes into picture. So this is the kind of vehicles which will come. And when you look at the future, when you are trying to reduce the carbon emissions, you have to move towards hydrogen economy. That's the trend looks like. If you look at this particular slide, which shows you the hydrogen to carbon ratio, we initially were using wood as a fuel, then we started looking at coal, then coal came into picture, and then natural gas. So gradually what you are doing is you are reducing the carbon ratio in the hydrocarbon fuels. So ultimately it looks that the future lies with hydrogen, which will be totally carbon free fuel, and people will be looking at that. But how to get hydrogen? Hydrogen is the most abundant element, but how do you get it? That's the issue. Now, when we look at towards decarbonizing of energy carriers and fuels, there are several options available to us on how to get it. This is the slide which shows you in near term we are producing hydrogen in our refineries for desulfurization. We are the largest producers and consumers of hydrogen in our refineries. We know how to produce it, how to use it, but primarily we produce it from natural gas or from the oil. But you can produce it from water electrolysis, but you need a source of energy, electricity you need, whether you produce it from solar or wind, then perhaps it could become renewable energy. There are several options of near term, mid term and long term, but ultimately in long term you will have to produce hydrogen from solar, wind, thermochemical processes, biological processes, photoelectrochemical processes. There are several options on which R&D is happening. And the speed of R&D at this point of time is much faster than what was happening earlier because of the tools available to R&D these days. So I think as we move forward, we have done big things in solar energy. So why not perhaps in photoelectrochemical processes for production of hydrogen, things will happen. And then you can use this hydrogen, store it in gaseous form or liquid form or even solid hydrogen. There are a lot of methods to store it, on which R&D has been done. And then finally what is going to happen is that you can use hydrogen in fuel cells. Fuel cell is nothing but the opposite of electrolysis. In electrolysis you produce hydrogen and oxygen. In case of fuel cells, the inputs are hydrogen and oxygen, and you create electric current, and the exhaust is only water vapors. So, and the advantage of these fuel cells, on which a lot of work has been done already and now they are being used also quite an extent, is that they are quieter, they are cleaner. As I said, the exhaust is only water vapors. So you can fairly use them for various you can use them in automobiles, you can use it for power generation, etc. But provided you have hydrogen available to you. So as hydrogen will become available, they are much more energy efficient as compared to internal combustion engines. I think about 2 to 3 times more energy efficient. And some people have been saying that even if you produce hydrogen from oil and use it in fuel cells, it is much more energy efficient way of doing it. So I think for particularly for defense, where you need quieter operations, you need more secured operations, I think the fuel cells, even for telecom towers, there are companies who are doing in a big way in the country, putting up fuel cells for 24/7 power supply. I think Indian Defence Services can also look at this option at certain locations to start with. And when the hydrogen, if you can produce hydrogen from solar at certain locations, and you can produce hydrogen there by electrolysis, I think you have the fuel available at various locations. I think some R&D and some kind of pilot projects would perhaps help in ensuring the energy security also, and also the defense of this country. To sum up, India is highly dependent on import of oil and gas to meet its energy demands. And with the growing economy, which is growing very fast, we are in a happy situation. The transport liquid fuels demand will increase substantially. And for environmental protection, when we use more fuels, environment will also be a casualty. So in order to protect it, and also for the energy security, we need to look at other options like biofuels, hybrid technology, and hydrogen fuel cells, etc. I think Indian Army also need to work closely with oil industry to cater to its fueling needs for future, which we have been doing so far. But I think for its energy needs also, we need to do some of the projects together more in future. Well, there in this seminar, we'll have experts who will be throwing more lights on, as I said earlier, also on lubricants and on kind of fuel requirements for the existing and kind of infrastructure which oil companies are developing to cater to your needs. I think the key is that we need to work together to cater to your diverse needs. And to sum up, is clear that the future holds great opportunities, but it may have its own pitfalls also. And the trick which need to try is to avoid the pitfalls and seize the opportunities. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.